Hey folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. Carlos, it's good to see you, man. You look a little different though. Last week, you're coming off the glow of a really great piece about Kirk Gibson. We spent the whole episode talking about it, and this week, I'm not sure what skin did you slip on this week. You look a little bit different. Your readers noticed too in the comments when you wrote about Lamar Jackson, which we're going to get into in a second, and hopefully you'll have some kind of explanation. I'm sure curious to hear it. I'm sure our listeners are too. And then we're going to get into opening day. Your favorite sport?
My favorite, I don't know, baseball. Baseball's right up there with probably hockey, but yeah. I guess my first favorite sport was basketball. Now you were on vacation and you've come back and right away, bam, 2 basketball columns because of course people are craving college basketball from an NIT team and they crave Pistons basketball columns. So Sean,
you go
week off, bam, basketball.
You go where the news is, and Hunter Dickinson.
Pistons are news?
Hunter Dickinson. Wait a second. The first one was about Juwan Howard, who had a tough season, and Hunter Dickinson, which was
it ended like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 3 weeks ago.
Right, but Hunter Dickinson transferred a few days ago. Right, put his name in the portal, so that's news. That's what we call news in this business. We kind of go that way. I know sometimes you struggle with that because you think whatever you write should just be out A1, whether it's newsy or not. I get that, but sometimes we go where the news is. And the Pistons are ending their season. They had their second to last home game, and so it's time to go check in. Yeah, there was another columnist there last night too. By the way, because they understand what news is. But in any case, we're gonna save that next week until the Red Wings and the Pistons seasons are officially over. Because we got a big baseball game coming up, a party.
Opening day.
It's really what it is. It's a big party.
It's an excuse to get a little drinking in and get your car washed and go downtown and see people and be seen.
No, it's totally true. It's funny. Bryce, who does the Pistons Pulse with Amari Sankova, covers the Pistons for us, was actually at the Pistons game, Tuesday night when the Miami Heat were in town. And he told me that every Uber he's gotten into, every driver wanted to tell him, well, I hope you're staying for Thursday for opening day because it's different here. And then, there's nothing else like it. And then, of course, we were at a round table before the game started. And everybody argued about, is it any different here? I mean, do they party like this in other cities? I don't know. We'll talk about
Chicago. I guarantee you, the Cubs.
That was the one we could come up with. Wrigleyville.
I think the Red Sox too. The Red Sox have that whole.
Maybe the Red Sox. We'll get into a little bit of that and how the Tigers open up in Tampa and playing in Houston and getting ready to take on the Red Sox back home at Comerica. But before that, let's talk Lions and free agency and your idea that somehow there are a few things going on here. And I want the listener to understand. Well, first of all, let's just let Carlos talk. Let's start with this. He mentioned Lamar Jackson, the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. He mentioned Lamar Jackson in a column about the Lions free agency. And he didn't really argue the Lions should go after Lamar Jackson. It was a little confusing, but here's the platform, man. What was your point, first of all, with Lamar Jackson?
The point of Lamar Jackson is this is all stemming from the Lions being at the league meetings last week in Phoenix. And, Dan Campbell, the coach, says that, he was asked whether there was any interest in pursuing Lamar Jackson. And he said, he admits he's a really great talent. He's really hard to scheme against and to defend against, but they have a quarterback, meaning Jared Goff, that they're comfortable with. And the point about Lamar Jackson is I think there's a lot of unhinged zealousness for what the Lions have done in free agency, which honestly is not a lot. They have not. I mean, people are. If you listen to people, you've listened to fans, you read the comments on our stories and columns, and I mean, they've crowned them the offseason champions already, even before the draft starts, right? And to me, you can't say that without thinking, hey, why not even? And I don't know. Maybe they gently pursued the idea of looking into trading for Lamar Jackson, because he's still with the Ravens. I think he signed an offer sheet or something, but so they'd have to trade for him. That's part of the whole free agency process, though, is trading for guys in the offseason, right? And I think he's the kind of special talent, former league MVP, dual threat guy, dynamic. He's like 26 years old. He's the kind of guy, when you get a chance to get somebody like that, you should do it. And you and I both know, Sean, I mean, as much criticism that people have given me for even bringing up the idea of possibly, getting Lamar Jackson and wrecking the Lions salary cap and all this other stuff, and Lamar's just about Lamar. The minute that the news comes over, when Adam Schefter breaks it, Lamar Jackson, Lions have agreed to terms, are acquiring, bam, everybody goes nuts and everything drops. Nobody's like, oh, well, I don't know about this. They're just too excited about it because he's that kind of a difference maker, talent-wise. And as I said, Jared Goff, good quarterback, had a really good season last year. But I think everybody really knows the puppet master is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. And when Johnson goes, going to have a lot of concerns about what happens to Jared Goff. He's under contract for 2 more seasons. So they're not tied to him for super long. But if you got a guy like Lamar Jackson, you don't have to worry about who your offensive coordinator is. He's going to work in anybody's offensive system. So the whole point was you can't consider yourselves these great free agency champions or magic makers or whatever they want to say if you're not really considering getting somebody like that. And we haven't had someone like that with the Lions who's come in, in their prime quarterback, someone who makes that kind of a difference. And also a very exciting player to watch on top of everything else besides being good. So that's the whole point, is that they didn't really, I don't see where people think that they made prudent decisions in free agency, but they didn't exactly hit some grand slam out there and like, oh man, the Lions, they're trending. They're just, forget it. They're on the road to the Super Bowl already.
Oh, there's a lot to unpack there. Well, first of all, I don't really have the sense that fans think that they went out and won free agency. I think they think that
you should read the comments.
The team got a little bit better. Or no, they're excited because
a little bit better. Okay.
Yeah. And they improved the defense. 2, this is the thing. This informs all of your thinking, and this is really the problem. Nobody else that covers the Lions or writes about the Lions or understands the Lions thinks that it's all starts and stops with Ben Johnson. That's the single biggest, I hate to say this, my man, but it's the single biggest flaw in the way you think about the team. No one else thinks that. Nobody. It's Dan Campbell, right? When he took over the offense the year before it started to change, he's the one that identified Ben Johnson. So if you think he can't identify anybody else, then the Lions have a much more serious problem than losing Ben Johnson, right? That's what it comes down to. So there's that. The other part is, yes, you said it. He's fun to watch. He's thrilling. But when I've watched him at the end of the seasons, right, and when he's got to make passes, he's not Jalen Hurts. He has not shown that evolution in the passing game that Hurts did a year ago. Maybe he will. So maybe you're taking a chance because he is awfully electric. But I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing about him. Goff, you're right. He's not a superstar player, but he has been to a Super Bowl. And last season he was really good, obviously. But he's had 2 other really good seasons. One great one that flamed out in the Super Bowl, but it was still the Super Bowl. So I just don't understand this. I mean, you were on Justin Fields for a while. So I get it. Dual threat quarterbacks. We just watched Hurts in the Super Bowl play fantastic. He's great.
Yeah, they're the future. The dual threat quarterbacks are the future of the NFL.
You got to be able to throw. And Fields,
you say, we don't think Lamar can throw? He's a really good
Hurts, thrower. Certainly not like Mahomes.
You don't have to be like Hurts or Mahomes.
You do, because
you can be a good thrower without being an elite thrower.
And Baltimore's had good teams around him. What has he done on the biggest stage that if you don't throw, you don't advance? It's really not that complicated. Now, Fields we'll see on Fields. Again, it's way too early to say what he's going to become. And to a degree, you're right. Jackson's only 26. But he hadn't done it yet, right? So he's been the league MVP. What else do you want? That's the exclamation. That's it. That wins the argument. How many guys have been league MVP, Sean? And what does he do when they're scheming up and he's got to throw, right?
Well, they cover his receivers. They limit the run game if their defense isn't as good as no quarterback's going to win a game and win a Super Bowl on their own. And certainly Jared Goff, yes, he played within Sean McVay's system to get to the Super Bowl. That was way more about Aaron Donald and their defense and Todd Gurley and the surrounding pieces. Nobody has ever said Jared Goff took the Rams to a Super Bowl. He's put them on his back. I mean, even Stafford,
that was a really
give
good
Stafford
team.
credit. He was the missing piece that took that team over the top. You couldn't say that about Jared Goff.
He was on
it's
a
also
really,
a few years
good,
ago.
He was on a really good team. There's no question. What I remember about that year, though, are all the downfield throws off play action. I had Todd Gurley in the background for sure, but he threw a lot of great balls that year. Look, of course he's not a superstar quarterback, but I don't get the fascination with guys that haven't shown they can do it yet. I mean, maybe you take a risk, that's fine, but it's
showed they can do what yet? Be a league MVP? I mean,
no, make plays when they matter.
Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. You wouldn't sign him either, right?
No, Marino was right. He never had a good defense, but he played in the Super Bowl, didn't he?
Yeah.
Right? Has Jackson sniffed it?
No. So the NFL is not about one player, and it's complementary, man. I mean, there's just not one person who can do it. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, based on his talent, he should have already won like 4 Super Bowls probably. But when the Chiefs defense isn't as good, if they don't have the run game, if the receivers are hurt, whatever, the offensive line is banged up, it all affects them. I'm just saying that Lamar is the kind of guy that they always talk about building a team around a player or whatever. You build a team around.
And why
Lamar
doesn't
Jackson.
Baltimore want to build around him?
They don't want to pay him.
Right.
That's
why don't they want to pay him what Mahomes or what Hurts is going to get paid? Why don't they?
I don't know. I mean, that's
one of the smartest
the
organizations in football. Why don't they want to pay him?
Well, I don't know if they maybe there's a damaged relationship there, that he's felt unsupported and he felt that they should have extended him, and nobody likes to get franchised, and I don't know. I mean, that sometimes it just doesn't work. Why did the Patriots let Tom Brady go? Why? I mean, there's just things happen, and sometimes it's like a family. Sometimes you know too much about each other, and if he doesn't believe in them, and they don't want to commit to him that kind of length, or they're saying, hey, you've been hurt, he did miss 10 games the last 2 seasons. If they're worried about his health, that's a legitimate concern.
Well, it's not just his health.
It's hard to say.
It's his style of play, which exposes him to getting hurt, right?
Yeah.
There's no question. There's no question. I get it. He's fun to watch, but he's fun to watch when he's running, right?
Yeah. He is. That's his main threat, is the ability to run.
Same with Fields.
To make off platform throws and whatever, but yeah, he's the kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that nobody knows the future, but you just hate for him to go somewhere and take that team to the Super Bowl, or take that team to deep playoff runs and think the Lions could have had this guy. Right. And I'm not saying, I mean, I admitted in the column, it's hard to get rid of Jared Goff, and it's hard to shop him, around the NFL. Hey, can we unload this guy, his contract? They can't keep him and Lamar Jackson on the team, so you'd have to move him. It would be very difficult. And the Lions Dan Campbell isn't going to tell the whole truth of, we looked at the salary cap. We looked at possibly, other suitors, and could we move Goff and whatever. He's not going to admit that, because it's ride or die for now with Jared Goff this season for sure. You don't want to, turn over the apple cart. But that's part of the problem with the NFL sometimes, is teams aren't willing to go for broke. When you have an elite level player in his prime that you can get, you need to sort of explore that option. And maybe the Lions have a little bit. They've talked about it. Have they thought about it at least? Maybe those conversations didn't get very far, but it's something you need to consider when someone like that is available and you have questions about your long-term plans at the most important position in sports, right?
But someone like what? That's the question, right? At no point was he mentioned last year with Mahomes or Burrows or even Josh Allen. You haven't mentioned him all along. Here's my theory. You didn't like the happy way the fans were reacting to free agency, which, by the way, I didn't think was over the top at all. They were pleased that they were smart and got some what looked like better pieces in the defensive backfield. I think that's what they were most excited about. But they're not talking Super Bowl. They're hoping they can compete and win the division. I just wonder how much of it is, okay, these people are enjoying themselves over here a little bit. I'm going to come over here and put some put some rain on that. I think that's what people think.
I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade. I'm trying to bring some balance and some sanity to the conversation. But fans are listen. If you listen to sports talk radio, if you read the comments in our stories, people, and frankly, other people in our business, who are touting what's going on, they're practically unhinged about how amazing this team is. What a genius. I saw a comment in Dave Burkett's story today talking about Brad Holmes, and someone said, and listen, this is all just fans, right? And I do understand that. And these are the most fanatical of fans who are commenting on stories on the website, which is great. Thank you very much for the comments. Really enjoy your engagement. But they were saying something like, someone said Chuck Schmidt was the best GM in my lifetime up until now. Brad Holmes, the guy who brought you 9-8 and 3-13-1, is the best general manager in Lions history.
That's so disingenuous, Carlos.
That's what they're saying.
No,
that's exactly
not what
the comment.
Saying. They are not saying that.
Dude, he literally wrote that.
They are saying what? That he was the best GM?
He was the best general manager in their lifetime.
Saying that, though. He's not talking about 9-8. He's talking about having 2 really good drafts back to back. It gives them hope.
Right.
That's all that is.
Right.
That's all, and that's based on.
It's
fact.
Brought you 12 wins. Yes. Those amazing
fans are a lot
it's always about
that.
They
understand that there's a rebuild going on here. That's what they know, and what they know is that within that rebuild, Holmes has had 2 good drafts. That's all he's saying, and that's a fact, and that's all those fans mean, and you know that. Right?
I'm going by what someone writes, and what they're saying is that this, and he has had 2 very good drafts.
Not that black
Absolutely.
and white.
No question. No question he's had 2 good drafts.
That's all those fans are excited. If he hadn't drafted well, they wouldn't be saying that. You know that, right?
Right. He's had, and the whole thing is the ridiculousness of someone having 2 drafts, and you're saying he's the best general manager in your lifetime.
Why is that ridiculous when you
because he can have 2 terrible drafts. Nothing can happen. He can face plant in this one.
Well, of course he could, but when you consider, but they're hopeful right now because of the history.
They're always hopeful.
Not like
every team's always hopeful. After every draft, every team's hopeful. Every single team. Oh yeah, we got great guys. Because you can't criticize anybody when they get drafted. You don't know what their potential is.
You know darn well there's a difference between what fans are feeling at the moment, as opposed to what they felt for the last however many years. You know that's different, and that could change in a second this fall.
Exactly,
and they know that too. They
exactly
understand this. They understand all of it. What they don't understand is pushing for a guy who hasn't proven, right?
That he can be the MVP, the best player in the league. No, yeah, that's ridiculous. Why would we push for that?
He hasn't proven he can win and be the kind of quarterback we just witnessed in this last playoff run. He's not played at that level. That's why Baltimore doesn't want to pay him, right?
Well, I don't know exactly why they don't want to pay him. I don't know that depth of knowledge in the Ravens organization, but yeah, I mean, if
Karl
they have
Malone
concerns,
won the MVP when Michael Jordan beat him, right? I don't know. Steve Nash was a great player. He won back-to-back MVPs when Shaq and Kobe were in their prime or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just It happens. But who do you want when the games are matter the most at the end of the season? I don't know. You got to have certain kind of things. In basketball, you got to be able to play at least a little bit on both ends of the court. In football, you got to be, if you're a dual threat, you got to be able to both do both sides of the duel. You got to have that duality.
we saw Lamar Jackson come here to Ford Field a couple of years ago. He could throw just fine. I mean, we can look up the stats. I'm sure he was there's no problem with his passing. He's not Tim Tebow.
No. You're right. I don't mean to make it sound like that. It's just that there are a few other guys out there right now that are just doing it at a little bit higher level. Not the running, but the passing.
Are they available? Yeah, if Patrick Mahomes is available, they should probably go after him too.
Yeah, no, but there's kind of a difference between Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I just want to know where this Lamar Jackson stuff is coming from. This is the thing. This is what I'm genuinely curious about. It hadn't been there for I haven't seen it before from you. So why now? Because of the reaction.
Why now?
Because Campbell was asked about it. Because of the reaction of the fan base that they're hopeful.
Right, because of last week. Last week they're all talking about the Lions are in the league meetings, and they're talking about what do we talk, how they've done free agency, who they pursued, why they haven't considered Lamar Jackson. So to me, it's kind of ridiculous of why you wouldn't even consider him. Now, like I said, he can't tell you the whole truth. He can't say, yeah, we would definitely consider him without Jared Goff losing his mind and undermining the whole idea of, believing in your quarterback and your offense and the leadership and all that stuff. So you can't necessarily, but I'm just trying to bring some perspective to that whole conversation of course you should consider Lamar Jackson. And this is why.
Yeah, to me, if you want to douse on their hope, you gotta bring it with a little bit more, analysis in terms of what a quarterback actually is, right?
No, that's you. You like to bury stuff in
MVP.
analysis and all that. I have an opinion. I have my perspective, and that's what I write. I mean, I'm not trying to douse anybody's hope. There is hope this season for sure. As long as your offensive coordinator Ben Johnson is there, you have hope this season. And I've said that you need to. I think one of the things that we're hearing from the Lions, and traditionally this is true, right, is let's build this team. Let's be sustainable. Every NFL team wants to do that. I'm really worried, and I don't know why you aren't, that Ben Johnson is the key to this team right now. That defense was so awful even last year. It got better toward the end, but it's been awful for 2 seasons. Their coordinator's still there. They haven't made that many changes, okay? So you still have half of your team you're not sure what you're going to get out of, okay? You have the other half, the offense, that has been elite. And it's been elite because of your coordinator. You need to seize on that moment, and whatever it is that helps you get there. And I know they're going to think about drafting on defense and helping the defense, and that's a good thing to do. But how far can you go this season with Ben Johnson? I think more people would be surprised or shocked if they have a really good season and Ben Johnson stays again. He's almost certainly going to be gone after this next season, especially if they make the playoffs, if they do what they want to do. So be hopeful, but you have to be able to seize on the moment, because if Ben Johnson leaves and you still got Jared Goff, then what? Then you got to bring in another coordinator. You got to maybe draft a quarterback early next year. It can work out. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'm saying right now, the thing you have for sure is a really good offense led by a really good coordinator. So what can you do to maximize that potential? Lamar Jackson, an elite quarterback, is someone who would help you maximize that potential.
Right, who doesn't throw the ball as well as the quarterback they have now. And by the way, it's not just Ben Johnson. They have one of the best 3, 4, 2, 3, whatever, wherever they're ranked in Pro Football Focus. I think Philly was ranked number 1. Offensive lines in football, right? They've got a good receiving crew. You know what I mean? They do.
No,
they got one of the best young receivers in the league.
Yeah, they got Amon-Ra St. Brown is who they have.
Right.
They got rid of their Pro Bowl tight end. DJ Chark wouldn't sign with them again.
Yeah, and the offense got better after they lost their Pro Bowl tight end. We'll see what Jameson Williams does. Whatever. They've got offensive pieces. They've got talent. Quit acting like it's just Ben Johnson working a miracle here.
Ben Johnson was the guy who flipped the switch.
They clearly, the stats show it. It started with Campbell when he took over. The numbers back that up.
Yeah. Who was his passing game coordinator when he took over?
It doesn't. No, I understand that, but it started when Campbell took over.
You love Dan Campbell.
No, it's not that I love Dan Campbell. I'm just looking at the facts. I'm looking at the best organizations have teams that are good for a while. This is what Dave Burkett talks about all the time because of the head coach. And then can you hire coordinators? We just saw the Chiefs win a Super Bowl, right? I'm not saying Dan Campbell's Andy Reid or Belichick or whatever, but that's how those or the Steelers, they've done that for years. I know they've fallen off recently, but that's how these organizations run. Right.
Okay, let me ask you this.
And
I'm saying you love Dan Campbell, but I'm saying I love Dan Campbell too, Sean. I
love Dan Campbell. I just think he might be really good.
You've written so many. When you go to Lions, you write nothing but Dan Campbell. You love him. He's a fascinating guy. Everybody loves. He's the crack cocaine of Detroit sports media. Everybody loves to cover Dan Campbell. He's fun. He's a good dude. He's smart. All that stuff. Great. I love him. However, here's the thing. Who did he hire as his coordinators? Aaron Glenn and Anthony Lynn. He had to basically fire Anthony Lynn after the first half of his first year with the team. He inherited Ben Johnson from the previous regime. Now, yeah, he was smart not to get rid of him. He's like, yeah, this guy's smart. Let's keep him around. Tight ends coach, great, right? And then when he gets rid of Anthony Lynn as a play caller, Ben Johnson basically takes over organizing the passing game, which is the most important part of the offense. Great. The offense gets much better in the second half of that first season. He doesn't immediately name him the offense coordinator. He waits for a couple months. He finally names him officially the offensive coordinator. Great. He doesn't say he's going to call plays until almost the start of last season. He officially says, yeah, he's going to call plays. So what kind of a genius are you talking about with Dan Campbell that he identifies?
I'm not saying
he's hiring the best coordinators.
I'm not saying he's a genius. I'm not saying he's done that.
He kind of lucked into Ben Johnson.
No, I'm not saying he's done that. I'm saying you don't know if he's not the key. You don't know that. That's the problem. You keep acting like you know. You don't know.
No, I know Ben Johnson is the key.
Give up the play calling. I bet he struggled. To me, he struggled with the play calling decision in part because he had some success and enjoyed it, and he talked about that himself in that last half of that season before. That was all that was. I don't know if he's going to be able to. We'll see about Aaron Glenn. I mean, what was their defense the last 8-9 games of the year? Top 15. I think that's what the numbers say. I remember looking.
I know where it finished.
No,
31st?
Yeah, because they were historically bad in the first. Right. So who knows what they've got in Aaron Glenn? I don't know. They did get better. They got to kind of mid.
Would you be more shocked if they got great or if they stayed among the worst defenses in the league?
Here's the thing, and we'll never know this is true or not. I do feel like that the way the defense was playing in the last part of the season, which was okay. I mean, it was obviously a lot better than what they had been playing. It wasn't dominant by any stretch, but it was okay. That if they got into the playoffs, they might have had a chance to win a game, right? I mean, they weren't going to be Philly, but or San Francisco. I mean, you wouldn't think they would beat either of those teams, but although they played with Philly at the beginning of the year, but it felt like their defense was at least good enough to get into the playoffs.
Sure, they were a playoff team. They should have. If Seattle beats the Rams, they're in the playoffs. They should have been there.
I mean, that's the level they were playing at, right? So I don't know. I don't know if they'll sustain that or not. Who knows? But that's what people are hopeful for. In any case, we've gone on long enough about this. The key word you said there is yes. It's opinion. It's your opinion. It's not necessarily perspective, because that requires something a little bit more, but it's your opinion.
It requires a Sean Windsor
No, it doesn't. It's not
analysis
me.
land.
It's not me. It's just how this works, and you want to do your own thing, and that's fine. In any case, I don't think we've got the secret of how we went from Kirk Gibson to Lamar Jackson, but we tried, listeners, so I did my best. All right, we'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlson Shaw. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlson Shaw. All right, Carlos, we got that out of the way. Let's get the love going again, man. It's much more.
People love it when we fight and argue,
they
Sean.
don't.
The love.
I mean, maybe a few people do, but I don't think a lot. Who knows? I don't know. I don't want to put a percentage on it, but let's get the love going again. Here's my question to you with opening day coming up, because we're both going to be there. And I want to know, are you going to make a declaration on what the season will be after what will then be 7 games? So, because they will come, are you gonna make a definitive statement on what they're going to be or not?
No, I mean it's hard, like when they got just run over in Tampa for the opening series there. They looked god awful, and I thought at the time, it doesn't look great, but this is such a small fraction of the season, 162 games, 3 games in on the road. Yes, it didn't look good, but baseball's different. It takes a little while for people to find their way, for them to, massage, for Hinch or any manager to massage the lineup. So I don't think this is going to be a great team by any stretch, but we're going to see ups and downs. We're going to see, I think we're going to see a lot more extended losing streaks, that we're going to see winning streaks or even series wins. They've had a nice little run in Houston, and it's coming against the defending World Series champs. So that's somewhat encouraging. I think that's what the season's going to be about, really, is taking steps and seeing some players develop, especially the younger players. And that's what it's going to be. That's what the season's going to be more, is about storylines for players and more than victories for the team. So, it's a long season, and even if they lose 10-0, whatever, I don't think you should really, it's not saying they're going to win, 40 games or whatever it is. So it's a long road, and I don't think anybody's going to declare anything after the home opener.
I was, of course, half kidding with that question, but listener, I wonder if you figured out what just happened there. So if you paid attention, enough of attention to kind of, we talk about reading between.
You trying to bait me?
We talk about reading between the lines. Well, did you listen between the lines to what Carlos was just saying there? So this is my perspective. His answer there was thoughtful, and he used larger context and perspective. And he does that when he writes about the Wings. He does that when he writes about the Pistons, which I know isn't quite as much. He does that when he occasionally gets into college sports, but he doesn't do that with the Lions. And so I think I've thought about this some, and I think I figured it out a little bit here. There's a psychology with the Lions that he feels, and I don't mean to talk about him like he's not right here with us. Sorry about that, because he is here with us. But I wonder if that's the secret. That's the secret. All that context and perspective that goes with everything else he writes about sort of disappears with the Lions. And I don't know if it's because you were on the beat for that long, or there's just something in your gut when everybody starts to get giddy, you're like, no. When everybody starts to get angry, you're like, no, it's not so bad, right? So why are the Lions different? I mean, I know we're talking about opening day here, but I just wanted to ask you that question real quickly, because that was in your thoughtful answer on the Tigers.
I don't know why it's different. I don't think there's any thing you can point to. I mean, I certainly agree with the fans a lot of the times, and I disagree with them. I'm not really trying to say or contradict anything that the fans are feeling. Certainly their reaction to things, to issues and trends. I'm trying to understand what some of the fans, at least the fan base, believes about this team, any team that I cover. But I think it's because it was mostly, we're getting back to the Lions thing, but it was more of a reaction to what the team itself was saying during the league meetings, and how some of it was how fans were reacting to that. And what I'm trying to do, Sean, more than anything, is explain to people, listen, this is the stuff that's being not said. There are many instances, and I'm not going to get into the sausage making too much, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in our business where questions are asked in a certain way, in a certain forum, at a certain time, and they're sometimes meant to elicit very specific answers. And the thing that I try to bring to light sometimes is the reason that, giving you the alternative of the risk. This is the reason why this question was answered or asked this way, and why it wouldn't have been asked another way, and I think that's part of it. Is there's kind of this veneer in our business sometimes of let's ask the most innocuous question that brings something to light, that casts something in the best light, I guess, and I think we get into this. I think in our business we get into this sometimes. It's just, hey, we're going to write some guy had a good game. Let's go write a story about how he had a good game, but we're not going to balance it with, yes, there are still deficiencies in this person's game or in this person's background or this person's whatever. It's just going to be, this is going to be the story of success, and that's it. And we're going to forget about all the struggles and all the deficiencies, and we're just going to ask questions about that. We're not going to bring enough balance to the equation. And that's what I try to do, is just bring some balance whether the fans agree with me, whether they don't, whether whatever, if you want a bunch of rah-rah boosterism, I'm definitely not the person to read for that. So that's it. Just bringing some balance.
Well,
And I'm not trying to be the contrarian. People think I try to be the contrarian. Like, that's ridiculous. I don't know what everybody's thinking at one moment. So I can't contradict everybody out there.
No, but people think that based on, they have their reasons for thinking that. But
it's because everybody goes so far afield the other way of it's just rah, happy.
No, because
I look like the guy who's like dousing them.
No, but that's not but the reason that people think that is because when things are really bad and people are really angry, you go the opposite way. You've done that. So that's why they do that. You mentioned when you started at the top of this show, it wasn't just Campbell's response down in Phoenix at the or wherever the coaches meetings were. I thought it was Phoenix. Maybe
Phoenix. It was Phoenix.
That you were talking about everybody's reaction and they think they're going to win the Super Bowl. And you were talking about fans and readers' comments. You weren't talking about the Lions themselves. So that absolutely influenced how you were thinking about the Lamar Jackson thing and so on and so forth. In fairness to you, the other part of this, I think, that makes the Lions a little bit different is football. And each game it carries a lot more weight. And there's this sense in the way we build it up, Monday through Saturday to get to Sunday, or Monday night, I guess, occasionally, feels more substantial. And so it lends itself to making more declarative proclamations and making more weighty kind of statements about the state of things. You know what I mean? Like if for example, I've got a column coming out about Jaden Ivey, the Pistons rookie point. He's playing a lot of point guard, actually. He was drafted as a 2-guard, and he's been playing really well, and he had a really, really good game against the Miami Heat earlier this week. And I could talk about his struggles, right? I started the column off with the fact that the Pistons have lost 21 and 22 games. So there's that. But I understand, too, that readers know he struggles to turn the ball over sometimes. And so you're talking about balance, but readers generally know. And that, to me, that's the thing. So I try to think about what is understood. So, maybe you want to get people to think about something in a different way, no question. But if you're talking about somebody just, hey, okay, this team's really struggling, but here's somebody off to the side that's really getting better, and you want to write about that, you don't have to provide a litany of all the struggles with that particular individual too, because
you need to mention them.
Fans
you need to mention
know
them.
that, though. They already
you can't assume it all the time.
Yeah, you can, because if they're watching the Pistons, they understand that. I mean, you can, like Jaden Ivey had 5 turnovers against the Miami Heat. Now, I didn't write that he had 5 turnovers. I could have, but I've written about his turnover struggles before. It doesn't. I don't feel like.
So this is just Jaden Ivey's amazing, but he didn't have 5 turnovers.
It's just about the areas he's gotten better. Like he's struggled defensively. Now he's starting to improve there a little bit. He struggled to handle double teams. That's the next area. So you talk about that, but the way you pick and choose things, it's a day-to-day thing so many times, right? With football, I don't know, maybe because it's just played so infrequently, right? Maybe,
and there's definitely markers.
Maybe that's it.
It's the frequency. It's also the markers within the season and the league meetings, right? You wrap that up. What have you said about it? How are fans digesting, basically more or less the end of free agency, that kind of stuff.
No, right. And get it back to baseball.
At the end of the season.
Yeah, no, get it back to baseball real quick. I remember I was at opening day a long time ago. Guerrero was in his prime, and I don't know if he didn't get a hit that game. Or no, he came up to the plate. This is when he was just the best hitter in the game.
Vladimir Guerrero.
He came out of the plate. He was the best hitter in the game, and he struck out or something. And I tweeted, and I almost never tweet. Back then, I tweeted a little bit more, and I tweeted, all right, the season's over. He's done. He's past his prime, whatever. And it got a lot of reaction, right? Because we do tend to make these, obviously I was being facetious, but I do think we can get lost in that sometimes. And, you've shown a lot of restraint with the Pistons and the Wings in particular, right? And the same with the Tigers. I think you did this last year. So, but for some reason with the Lions, maybe it's just the nature of that game itself. It's harder to do.
Yeah, I don't care about restraint. I mean, if you want to be restrained, if you want to restrain yourself, you can. I don't really think about that as far as Am I going to be careful? Am I going to be cautious? I'm going to, placate the fans. Am I going to write something positive or negative? I really don't care about that stuff. I don't label things that way. I'm going to go after somebody, and I mean, and I've always said this if someone's ever criticized me or like, you're too negative, I could fill your house with the metric tonnage of positive things I've written about the Lions. Wouldn't you know, most positive things don't get as much notice or traction,
No,
whatever you want to
they
say.
don't, and so that makes people think that you're doing that for a reason, even if it's not true, right? And by the way, a lot of your positive stuff was coming when everybody else was being negative.
That's a good point. I have no idea. I mean, when Campbell took over and they won 3 games last, in 21, I was like, hey, this is going to be, like I'm saying about the Tigers, it's going to be a process. You have a new team president and Scott Harris with the Tigers. He wants them to have a different approach at the plate, or the strike zone from pitching and hitting. It's going to take a while. People think that it's going to turn around really fast for some reason. And when they brought in Hinch, last year, they thought the same thing, right? Like, we have a World Series winning manager, and they started off really great and got everybody's hopes up. Or they didn't start off great, but they ended great. And
you mean 2 years ago? Yeah.
2 years ago, and they thought, well, this is it, right? They're on their way. And then when they crashed and burned last season, then what? Then we got to fire the general manager. So, I mean, I think it's just people want instant fixes these days more than ever. And 2 years ago with Campbell, it was like, listen, you got to be patient, and you got to look at where are they making improvements, and they did make some improvements. And this year with the Tigers, it's going to be the same thing. Look for some improvements. If you think Torkelson's going to hit 30 home runs, I don't know. That's probably not going to happen. But, if he can be, if his OPS can hover near 800, that's amazing. If he hits 20 home runs, that's going to be great. Somewhere in the high teens. If he sticks, he doesn't have to get sent down to AAA, little things like that. That's what you got to look at the season as. And yeah, I mean, who knows? People are going to say, oh, you're just being positive. And when the Tigers are on when they've lost whatever it is, 10 of 12 or whatever, people are going to be dumping on them. And it's like, well, yeah, the team is not good maybe at that point, but you also need to consider, where are they making strides? Are they making strides where they are intending to? That's what you need to look at. But everybody's tired of it. Everybody's tired about the rebuilds throughout the whole city of Detroit. So
they really are, and one team's rebuild suffers because everybody else is rebuilding, right? So it's all because most people love all the teams, and they're just worn out. And I think that's also contributing to this fervor we've been feeling from the Lions fandom, right? I mean, fan base, sorry. Is that, oh my God, finally, and no, who knows? But it feels a little bit exponential because of everybody else's struggles. Also, too, that they're the most popular team in town, so that we don't want to discount that either. Before we wrap this section up and sticking with the Tigers, is Riley Green a movie star? Right?
A movie star?
No, I mean, I know not literally a movie star, but it's funny. I was thinking about him the other day, and if he hits, and I don't mean literally hits the baseball, but obviously that means he's got to hit the baseball too. But if he pops, with the way he carries himself, not just the way he defends, that beautiful swing of his, but just the way he carries himself in every way, in the locker room, everywhere else. And I'm sure you've talked to him. He's got that thing, man, and I don't know if the talent's he's going to be able to match that, but what do you think his potential is, not just as a baseball player, but as a star in this market and maybe even beyond? I know it's harder for baseball players if he hits because of the way his looks, he's got this easy charisma about him, Now obviously he's going to have to play well for any of that other stuff to matter. But if he does play well, what do you think his potential is just a star player?
I'll be honest, I haven't been around him enough to really, I was around him more. I guess when he was in spring training a couple of years ago, or last year, because they were so bad. Didn't really talk to him a lot. I haven't gotten a great sense of him, Sean, as far as like, is he a star or a superstar kind of guy? His personality. Torkelson to me has been more of the guy that, because he struggled, you haven't seen it, but Torkelson has more, I think, natural personality in him.
He's a little more
being fun.
Yeah, he's a little more shucks. He's fun. I enjoy talking to him too. But Riley Green's got a little mystery to him, and the looks help for sure. Let's not pretend that's not the society we're in, right? Just the way he walks.
What do you mean?
The way I mean, looks matter, right? The way he walks, the way he carries himself. When you combine all that, I mean, that was always to me one of the more underrated parts of Michael Jordan. And that celebrity, that iconic celebrity, along with the play and the narrative and all the mythology around his killer will and all that sort of stuff, along with everything he did on the court, he was a spectacular looking human being, right? And that's not a small part of it. When you're talking about somebody that, and I'm not saying, I don't mean to even begin to talk about Riley Green in the same way, but it just struck me watching him hit the other day and thinking about when I've talked to him, just the way he carries himself, that he could be the face of the franchise, I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't have that sense about him yet, honestly. I don't have that sense about him. He doesn't seem to, this is my perspective, but I don't feel like he has superstar written all over him that way.
If baseball can even produce a superstar.
Oh yeah, of course they can.
They haven't had one since Derek Jeter. So, Shohei is probably the closest thing. Yeah,
Fernando Tatis.
He doesn't cross over, but the Shohei does a little bit. You're right, but
Fernando Tatis doesn't cross over. Okay.
No, I mean, when's the last time you saw a baseball player making national commercials outside of
Mike Trout,
but even Trout hasn't really hit.
Derek Jeter,
Jeter's the last one. Yeah, no, for sure. Baseball hasn't had a transcendent player since Jeter in terms of the pop culture. And I'm not trying to suggest Riley Green's going to be that at all. I don't mean that at all. It's interesting. Baseball's just kind of, yeah. And he used to have a bunch of them. In fact, I was thinking about this, Carlos, not to get too far down this tangent, but I was thinking about this when I saw a video last week or the week before of Ken Griffey Jr. Was he at the World Baseball Classic maybe? So a couple of weeks ago?
I don't know.
He was in a batting cage with a bunch of current players around him, and he turned his back, and how old is he? Almost 60? I don't know.
Ken Griffey Jr.?
Yeah, right?
No, he's probably like in his 40s or 50s, maybe.
He's in his 50s. Sorry. When did he retire?
Probably 50s. He's a little older than I am, I think.
You're in your 50s, right?
Yeah.
This is when we need a
fact checker.
A crack research team, right? He's 53. Okay. He's 53.
He's 60. Wow. That's quite
I said
rounding up.
Near 60. Sorry, he's 53. I was thinking he was mid 50s. Anyway, you would sit there and you watch him, and the way people were crowded around him, all these young players, and he was hitting. I mean, he's got a little bit of a belly, and that's you know what I mean. There's the bat speed's nowhere, whatever it was, but the swing itself and the motion was still there. Now he's not as fluid, you know how it is. You get to our age, right? But he was a star like that, right? Like he was a crossover star. Yeah. And I miss those days sometimes when baseball produced guys like that.
Well, don't forget, I mean, that also happened in an era where, the NBA had barely started the whole Jordan era of the mega superstar. So the other leagues just have caught up, really. The NBA and NFL and NHL not quite as much yet in our country, but yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Baseball was such the dominant sport in our country for so long that it makes more sense. And the other, I mean, like the NBA especially really lends itself to personalities.
They've struggled this year. They've really struggled. There are a lot of reasons for that, but well, the NBA star started with Magic and Bird, and that was in the early '80s. So I mean, Griffey was. But anyway, no, I agree with that to a point. It's just sometimes I miss those days of baseball. The interesting thing about baseball, and I'll wrap this up real quick with the Tigers, is when a team does well in the local market, there's still nothing like a pennant race, right? If you have a baseball team running like that, there's still nothing like that locally. What's changed is that fans of local teams, if they're not doing well, are still as interested nationally in the sport and watching, the World Series and the playoffs. I mean, obviously the numbers bear all that out, but that's what's different. But like if the Tigers were to get good, there'd be buzz around here all summer, even if nobody else outside of Detroit cared, right?
For sure. And that's what the hope is, right? Is that they're not going to be awful and that they will draw people and interest. And I'm curious to see what the numbers are going to be for TV, because now with the pitch clock and all that, the games are going a lot faster. What that's going to do to the audience? Obviously, there's a reason they're doing that. I think the games have been too slow. And I was just having this conversation with somebody recently, another local reporter, and saying, he said, I don't know if people really go to the ballpark to really care about how fast the game goes. And I'm like, yeah, but this is really about TV audience, not about people who are in the ballpark. And it's true. It's what I love watching baseball. I'll catch a game as often as I can on TV, but man, when they just step out and the pitcher takes forever and all that, it gets hard to watch, especially you bring in reliever after reliever at the end. So I think it's a good move.
No question.
I want to see what the numbers are going to say.
Me too. Our former colleague who covered the Pistons for us, Vince Ellis, was at the Pistons game, the Heat game the other night. And that was the first thing he said to me. He said, "You go on opening day?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Man, this pitch clock is a blessing." He said he's watched 4 or 5 games since the start of the season. He's a big Pirates fan. And he said he's watched more baseball in the last 4 or 5 days than he has in the last 5 years. He said it's just completely changed the experience for him. And I got to imagine he's not alone. Now, he's a baseball a baseball fan to start with. So, that's the caveat. But yeah, I wonder how much difference that's going to make. I would bet. I'm with you.
Hey, as a Dodger fan, I mean, I as much as I like the Dodgers over the years, 2 of the human rain delays on the mound for them were Brad Penny and Kenley Jansen. And it was just so brutal to watch. And you know how baseball is. I mean, in the biggest moments, they're humans. They get nervous. They want to take their time and all that. And they step off the rubber and they whatever, and it just becomes excruciating trying to watch this. And like, there's so much at the moment where there's so much tension, you've got to wait so long for something to happen. It's unfortunate that baseball had to step in and say, you guys can't control yourselves, so we're going to start regulating.
No, for sure. And Vince made the point. And Vince said, look, and Vince is about our age, and and I think he's in his 50s too, but he said, oh, this is the game of my youth, right? Because they were a lot quicker back then. In fact, when I was young, and you were a Dodgers fan, so you were a National League guy, but when I was young, I thought the National League games were even quicker because they didn't have a DH. Now, I don't know how much quicker they were. They probably weren't a lot quicker, but it was just, it was an automatic, it was an automatic out.
An automatic out.
Right? So that probably didn't extend the game by much, but you just thought of the National League is even speedier and more concise because the pitcher batted. But
I wanted baseball to ban Nomar Garciaparra with his stupid glove thing and every pitch stepping out. It's, you know what, dude? No, you cannot do. I mean, it's just like you've got to protect people against their own bad or worst intentions or whatever inclinations. And and baseball it's just had way too much of that. And it is great. So it's kind of fun. You watch the pitch clock and see it ticking down. It's, oh my God, is he going to get the pitch out?
Right.
So it's funny to watch it. It's refreshing.
Yeah,
so,
no, for sure.
Good for Vince. I agree with him.
I'm with you. All right, let's take one more quick break and come back with our favorite thing. And we'll wrap up my Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. I couldn't remember the name of our show. You'll have to forgive me that. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. That's the time of the show for Carlos's favorite thing, and then I'll try to come up with one myself. Actually, I do have one, but it's really about Carlos. About Carlos. What you got, man?
Well, mine's about you, actually.
Your favorite thing?
Last week. My favorite thing is kind of sort of about you. because it was last week when the Tigers had their annual What's New unveiling at Comerica Park. And it's a lot of, all the new giveaways, all the new souvenirs, but mostly it's all the new food. That's always it's a highlight.
I'm a bad colleague. I didn't read that column.
You didn't read it, and it made people very happy, Sean. They were very happy. The fans and the readers were very happy, so you should read it. I wasn't being mean to them, but
no,
you usually go to that,
and you're good.
Yeah, and I'm always authentic, so I'm always good. So you were there. You weren't there because you were off last week. So I was kind of bummed that you weren't there. It was one of our favorite things to do. We hang out, we try food. You and I are foodies, so we like to chat about it. Sue Salaski was there, so we had fun, together talking about the different food, and she also wrote a column about it. Some of the new food. So it was, it's always the funny thing about it is we don't go to Comerica Park. I think this year they may have hosted a small group when they were talking about bringing the fences in, changing the fences a little bit. I didn't go to that. But I haven't been to the park since last summer or fall. So it kind of signals like, hey, we're about a week. They always do it about a week before the home opener. So it's fun to just see people again and be in the park. And it's the Motor City Casino Club at the stadium, but all just trying the food, all the different things that they come up with. Some of it's crazy, some of it's weird, some of it's, a little bit off the wall. It's just kind of a fun entry point into the season. But I was bummed that you weren't there to do it with me, Sean. But that was definitely my favorite thing last week.
Well, that sounds like fun. I know it is fun. I've been there in the past. Yeah, I was off, and I feel bad that I didn't read you. I tried to step away from
Creep.com.
I'm going to have to check that
www.creep.com.
I tried to step away, even though I was on the podcast last week. It was the one thing I did for work, but I tried to step away from
Good for you.
I tried to step away a little bit. I was knee deep in taxes and, a lot of other administrative stuff, catching up on that kind of stuff. But so I will definitely check that out. My favorite thing is, and we probably could have made this a segment in the show. And it's weird to put it under the idea of my favorite thing, but because there's a lot of layers to it, and I don't want to spend too much time on it here. But what's the simplest way to say this? I liked that in the women's NCAA championship title game between Iowa and LSU, the reaction to Angel Reese when she held her hand up and kind of did the John Cena, no, you can't see me, to Caitlin Clark, the star of the tournament, the star of women's college basketball, actually, right now, the player of the year, national player of the year. She chased her around at the end of the game when LSU won, kind of holding her hand up John Cena style, and then pointed to her ring finger like Steph Curry did, which is where she got that. That just unleashed the backlash to some degree against her, defenders for her, saying Caitlin Clark's been talking trash and all that sort of thing, which she has. People trying to debate, was one worse than the other? Okay, there's a lot of stuff to unpack and all that. I don't want to do that here. And there was definitely some sexism going on. However, my favorite thing is that I think the country got to see that basketball is basketball, right? And that women play basketball just like men do in terms of talking and taunting and all of that kind of thing. It's been part of the sport for decades. And we don't think about it at all in the men's game anymore. And we shouldn't with the women's game. And I loved that the game got that many viewers, which was great. I don't know, it set a record. It was almost 9 million, 10 million viewers. I think it peaked at 12, which was only 2 million fewer than the men's game, which is astonishing. And that's largely due to Caitlin Clark, because she plays a little bit like Steph Curry, and she's just thrilling to watch. But forget the basketball for a second. I mean, the actual play, the talking, for the country to sort of understand, yeah, hey, we play the same way. I think that was a good thing, even though there's a lot of political stuff surrounding all this and stuff that we, I don't want to. There's a lot of nuance involved. There's some not so much nuance, but
this is a Sean Windsor column waiting to happen.
But the bottom line is, yeah, women deserve the space to taunt and make fun of and do all that and make fools themselves. That's what they want to do. in the same way that men do. And the fact that the country kind of got to see that and is talking about it, that's my favorite thing.
So they're following the bad example of the men. That's your favorite
I don't think
thing.
it's a bad example at all. A couple of weeks ago, Pat Beverly, who has been on 5 to 6 teams, he's a point guard in the NBA. He's, a role player, but he kind of has a reputation for a defender and a little bit of a talker. He scored. He's like 6'2". He scored over LeBron James when his team, the Chicago Bulls, were playing the Lakers. This is a week and a half ago, and turned around to him after he scored and held his hand out, his palm down, and held it a foot off the ground or the floor, the court, which signals too small, like you're too small. So a guy who's 6'2", scored over LeBron, who's 6'9", turned around and looked at him and held his arm down and gave him the too small gesture, which was just hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Or like Chris Paul, who his Phoenix Suns beat the Golden State Warriors early in the year, and Steph Curry's made the shimmy kind of one of his iconic trash-talking kind of moves. Chris Paul's Suns won the game, and he had a dagger shot, and he ran over to Curry, got right in his face, and shimmied at him in a way that's just hilarious. It's just part of it. We don't have to say we don't all have to be like Barry Sanders and say, hand the ball to the ref, right? We can have some fun too.
I prefer that, but yeah, we don't have to.
You don't like to have fun, so that's okay. All right.
But I had fun with you this week,
thank
Sean,
you. I had fun with you.
Thank you for coming back.
I hope you feel better. I hope this was a good session for you.
You've cured me once again.
Week, no, there's no curing you. Next week, we'll get back to breaking down your column. So I don't know what it's going to be, but I look forward to it. No pressure.
I do too. I look forward to your column.
You need to follow up the Gibson story with something, similarly provocative.
Redeeming. I need to redeem myself.
You don't need to redeem yourself. It's just, I'm kidding. All right, we've taken up enough of your time. Let's get out of here. We need to thanks some people. Who are we thanking, Carlos?
Let's thank our producer, Robin Chan, putting up with us once again. Executive producer, Kirkland Crawford. And I screwed this up now. I think she's an executive producer still. But she is our interim editor, Jeanette Delgado. But mostly, Sean, we need to thank you, the listener, for putting up with us yet again for another week. But where do the listeners find us?
Wherever you find your favorite podcasts, at Spotify, Apple. I'm sure there's some other places. Our research team is not helping us. The Free Press needs to get right on that. But when you get there, please subscribe. Give us a rating. Tell us what you think. We'd be grateful. And it makes it easier to listen. And we try to be easy to listen, don't we? We try not to argue too much. In any case, yes, thanks. Thank you, Carlos. Always a pleasure. Thank Robin, of course, for making this happen. And thank the listeners. And we will be back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean.